Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the center ground.
King Charles just took Camilla's crown and handed it to Catherine, completely surprising everyone. Sources say that Catherine, Princess of Wales, has just been given royal power that caught Camilla off guard, and Camilla's last request was reportedly ignored without any discussion. The big question is, what exactly did Camilla ask for that led to such a hard no? And did King Charles secretly give his wife's title to his daughter-in-law? Join us as we uncover the truth behind this sudden royal twist. The Queen who was never really wanted. If anyone wants to know why the palace is currently a disaster, just look at the fine print from 2005. Camilla was never supposed to be queen. This wasn't some hidden secret. It was the actual deal they made just to get people to stop booing. When she and Charles had that depressing little civil ceremony, the one his own mother didn't even bother to attend, the official word was that she'd stay a princess consort.
Queen Elizabeth says she wants Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, to be known as Queen Consort.
The royals weren't being humble. They were just terrified of the public because they knew Diana's ghost still had better approval ratings than the two of them combined. That promise lasted about as long as a New Year's resolution. Like most things said behind those palace walls, it died the second ambition got in the way. When the Queen finally kicked the bucket in 2022, Charles took the throne and dragged Camilla right up there with him as Queen Consort. That old princess consort deal was tossed into the trash like an embarrassing receipt. The palace acted like this was always the plan, while everyone else saw it for what it was, a classic bait and switch. After years of being the most hated woman in Britain and playing the villain in Diana's tragedy, she got the crown anyway. It turns out that if you just hang around long enough, the monarchy will eventually rewrite the rules just to keep the furniture looking tidy. Even with a crown on her head, she was reportedly standing on a floor made of thin ice. People working inside the palace claimed that Camilla was left out of the big loops you would expect a queen to be in. Her office was allegedly kept in the dark about things like succession plans and the future of the monarchy. When it came to deciding which charities to support or who would be the face of the brand, the decisions often skipped her desk entirely. She got the fancy title, but the actual keys to the kingdom were still hidden in a drawer she couldn't reach. It seems the royals are perfectly fine with her wearing the jewelry as long as she stays away from the steering wheel. The relationship with Catherine was sold to the public as a cozy friendship, but the reality behind closed doors was allegedly just a cold professional contract. These two women lived in completely different worlds. They were polite when they had to be in the same room, but they weren't exactly grabbing coffee and gossiping. Anyone watching them could see the warmth was about as real as a scripted reality show. It looked like two rival diplomats shaking hands for a photo op. Once the cameras were gone, the smiles disappeared, and they went back to their separate corners. But behind the scenes, things were already starting to change in a quiet but important way. If their relationship was never truly close, was it only a matter of time before that distance led to a shift in power? Catherine's rise to power. While the world was busy obsessing over Harry and Meghan's endless Netflix dramas and book tours, a much bigger move was allegedly happening behind the scenes. Catherine wasn't just showing up to smile and cut ribbons for the cameras. She was quietly building a level of power and respect that caught everyone off guard. This wasn't about looking good in a dress. Sources say it was a cold, calculated play to make herself the only person in the building who actually matters. She was playing the long game, while everyone else was fighting over podcast titles. It is honestly impressive to watch someone turn a hobby of shaking hands into a strategic takeover, while the rest of the family is busy airing their dirty laundry on global television. Her project on early childhood wasn't just another royal hobby. While most of the family is happy to just stand around looking important, Catherine actually brought in scientists and government officials to talk about neuroscience. This was a serious move into real policy work that hasn't been seen in decades. It gave her a seat at tables, where being a princess usually isn't enough to get people to listen. She started talking about data and social impact, instead of just posing for the usual boring charity photos. Sources say she was actually getting things done, and even the king couldn't ignore the fact that she was becoming the most competent person in the room. Then the health crisis hit and basically blew up the entire palace playbook. In early 2024, the news dropped that Catherine had cancer after some abdominal surgery.
I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time, it was thought that my condition was non-cancerous.
It felt like a bomb went off. The world didn't just give the usual polite nod. The reaction was massive and actually felt real. For a lot of people, it was the first time they felt that raw connection to a royal since Diana died.
We have reports from Paris that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident.
People were genuinely crying and piling up flowers outside Kensington Palace without being told to. It wasn't some PR stunt or a managed media moment. It just happened because people actually liked her, which is a rare feat for a family that usually feels like a collection of wax figures. The way Catherine handled being sick reportedly moved her up the ladder, not just with the fans, but inside the palace walls too. She didn't panic. She put out that calm video, took her time coming back, and kept her kids out of the mess while dealing with a nightmare. By late 2024, sources were telling People magazine that her behavior made King Charles, who was busy fighting his own cancer, really stop and think about the future. He was allegedly asking himself who actually has the public's trust and who has the spine to keep the lights on. It turns out that nothing says promotion like staying classy while your life is falling apart. The big question was who actually had the guts to carry the crown through the next disaster. According to people on the inside, the answer was becoming pretty obvious. Catherine was the one on the way up. Camilla reportedly started to feel the shift, like that weird feeling in the air right before a storm hits. It wasn't one big blowout or a specific argument, it was just a change in the vibe. Suddenly, advisors weren't lining up to talk to her anymore, and the important questions started being sent to someone else's office. But while Camilla was still trying to hold her ground, the palace itself was already moving in a different direction. If everything is taken away from her, was this the beginning of a full transfer of power? The alleged transfer of royal authority. By the spring of 2025, the rumors had become headlines about a massive internal shakeup. Major outlets were reporting that King Charles was officially moving the heavy lifting from Camilla's desk over to Catherine's. We aren't talking about a few extra charity walks or swapping lunch dates. This was a deliberate move to strip Camilla of her institutional power and hand it to the daughter-in-law. People who get paid to watch the royals were actually worried because this didn't look like a temporary fix. It looked like a permanent demotion. The king was essentially rearranging the deck chairs, and Camilla's chair was being moved further away from the captain's table. The real gut punch in this whole shuffle was how they handled the patronages. In the royal world, these aren't just hobbies. They are the only reason these people have a job. Owning a big patronage is like owning stock in the family business. Several of the most important ones, dealing with the arts, books, and hospitals, were allegedly snatched from Camilla and handed to Catherine. These were projects Camilla spent decades building up. Losing them wasn't just a calendar change. It was a total erasure of her work. The palace basically deleted her career and gave the password to Catherine. Beyond the patronages, sources reported a second and arguably more significant shift in the distribution of access. Where previously, Catherine's engagement with the king's senior advisory networks had been carefully mediated through formal channels, as is normal protocol for a Princess of Wales who has not yet ascended, she was now reportedly being included in conversations that would previously have remained the exclusive preserve of Charles and Camilla. The advisory circles around the king were allegedly beginning to expand in one direction only, toward Catherine and, by extension, toward William. The implication of this shift was one that every experienced palace observer understood perfectly. The king was allegedly repositioning his daughter-in-law not as a future asset, but as a present one. None of this was officially acknowledged by Buckingham Palace. Royal communications do not operate through transparency. The palace does not issue press releases announcing internal power shifts. It does not hold press conferences to explain the redistribution of patronage. It communicates through the quiet language of institutional action, through what happens rather than what is said. And what was allegedly happening, the cumulative pattern of evidence, was telling a story that royal correspondents who had spent decades learning to read that language found increasingly difficult to attribute to coincidence. According to sources, Camilla was observing everything that was happening, and she wasn't just sitting quietly. Beneath her calm and dignified appearance, which she had worked hard to maintain, something was brewing. A reaction was on its way, and when it happened, it would reportedly be the most important decision she had made since her wedding day at Windsor. The rejection that shook the palace. This is where the mask really slipped. According to Angela Levin, who basically lives in the king's pockets, Camilla finally snapped and demanded a written guarantee. She wasn't asking for a nice birthday card. She allegedly wanted it in writing that her rank, her remaining jobs, and her status wouldn't be touched. She wanted protection from Catherine's rise and any future shifts in public opinion. It was the royal version of a prenup, delivered right when the family was already falling apart. Insiders called it an ultimatum wrapped in polite language, which is just a fancy way of saying she held a knife to the king's throat and called it a request. Camilla basically wanted a signed contract to prove she still mattered. She didn't just want a pinky swear. She wanted it in the rule book. But when she asked, the answer was a hard no. It wasn't a screaming match in a hallway. It was just a cold, professional get lost. The king's team basically told her that the monarchy needs to stay flexible. That is code for, we need to follow the person that people actually like. They argued that a written deal would tie their hands when public moods change or when the next person in line needs to take over. They even had the nerve to say that denying her request was for her own good. It is the ultimate corporate move, firing someone's ego while claiming it's for the company's health. The translation of that fancy rejection was simple. No. The palace basically told her she could keep the fancy title and her spot in the parade, but the actual power was off the table. They wouldn't put her authority over the charities and the inner circle in writing because a contract makes it too hard to change your mind later. They need the freedom to snatch that power back the second it suits them, and a signed paper is just a pesky obstacle to a good old-fashioned corporate reshuffle. The people close to Camilla say she was absolutely livid, but she didn't throw a fit. She practiced the kind of quiet, dangerous anger you only get after being the most hated person in the country for 30 years. There were no public meltdowns or messy leaks to the tabloids to make the king look bad. Instead, she just went silent. Anyone hanging around the palace lately says that silence is loud, pointed, and freezing cold. But while Camilla sat in that cold silence, the king was already shaping a future that didn't seem to fully include her. If his vision was clearly centered on William and Catherine, where exactly did that leave Camilla in the long run? The king's vision and the future he is building. Since Charles took the throne, he hasn't stopped talking about his dream for a slimmed-down monarchy. He wants fewer people on the payroll, greater accountability, and a small team that actually delivers measurable results. For a change. This wasn't just a nice thought for a speech, it was a formal policy change, and it's already started to shift the balance of power. It's becoming very clear who is staying at the center of the frame, and who is being slowly, politely pushed toward the exit. In Charles's head, the future of the monarchy isn't about him and Camilla. It is about the people who can actually keep the lights on for another century. That means the focus has shifted entirely to William and Catherine. They are the only ones with the public's trust and the survival skills to handle the modern world. According to the king's own logic, they are the perfect middle ground, old enough to look serious, young enough not to be totally out of touch, and popular enough that people actually want to see them on their coins. According to major reports from The Guardian and The Times, Charles isn't just being a supportive father-in-law, he's basically acting as Catherine's career coach. He's reportedly checking her big speeches, opening doors for her that usually take years to unlock, and using her recovery as a way to give the monarchy a much-needed win. He's treating her like a CEO would treat their hand-picked successor, investing everything in the one person he thinks can actually save the company. Camilla, sources suggest, fits less cleanly into this forward-looking vision. She has earned respect in certain quarters. She has demonstrated resilience that few could have managed. She has, against considerable odds, turned a deeply hostile public narrative into something approaching grudging acceptance. But her age, her history, and the complex and unresolved legacy she carries from the Diana era mean that she is, allegedly in Charles's long-term calculus, a figure of the monarchy's present rather than its future. A distinguished, accomplished present, but present nonetheless, rather than future. Charles has apparently concluded that the future of the monarchy belongs to Catherine and the generation she represents. This decision has left Camilla in a difficult position, as she watches her influence fade with almost no way to stop it. Beyond modern politics and strategic planning, there is a much older, more personal dynamic at play, rooted in memory rather than simple policy. It feels like a ghost that never truly left the palace is finally dictating the terms of the future. It is the ultimate historical irony that after decades of trying to move on, the king is reportedly building the new era around a woman who reminds the world of the very person the institution once tried so hard to manage. But as the past keeps shaping the present, the lines between memory and power are starting to blur inside the palace. If Diana's shadow still influences who the public loves and who the institution trusts, is this shift really about strategy or something much deeper? The Diana shadow that will never fully lift. The version of this story cannot be told without confronting the ghost that has occupied every room since August 1997. Princess Diana has been gone for nearly 3 decades and has been absent longer than many of her modern mourners have even been alive. Yet her influence on how the public perceives Camilla remains as powerful as any official royal protocol. Within the monarchy, Diana is not just a memory, but an architectural force that still shapes the load-bearing walls of the institution. It is a bit of a cosmic joke that the one person the palace tried so hard to move past is the one who still dictates exactly where everyone else is allowed to stand. When Catherine got the cancer news in early 2024, the public went into a total meltdown. People started comparing the reaction to the chaos after Diana died, which is awkward, but honestly pretty accurate.
Princess Diana died following a car crash in Paris. Police confirmed the crash has killed.
This wasn't some fake, staged grief cooked up by a bunch of suits in an office. It was actually real. People felt a genuine connection to her because she spent years just showing up and acting like a normal human being while stuck in that royal goldfish bowl. She didn't seem to be trying too hard, which is probably why everyone felt like they actually knew her. Now the world is collectively losing its mind because one of the few likable royals might actually be mortal. Camilla can take over all the charity work and official titles she wants, but it won't change the underlying problem. She can show up to every boring state dinner, read the scripts, and stand exactly where the photographers tell her to. It doesn't matter. The way people feel about her is just a polite, slightly forced respect because she's been around forever. It's nothing like the actual obsession people have with Catherine. No amount of expensive PR or clever branding can fix a lack of genuine likability. It's baked into the culture at this point. Word is, even Charles knows the score and is making moves based on the fact that the public just isn't that into his wife. Tina Brown wrote a whole book about how the royals are still haunted by the 1990s. Every move they make is basically a reaction to the mess they made with Diana. They failed her, everyone knows it, and the public hasn't forgotten. Now Catherine comes along and she's young, seems honest, and puts her kids before the firm. Facing cancer with a bit of backbone just made people love her more.
Princess Kate's shocking cancer announcement on Friday that she recently had abdominal surgery.
She isn't trying to be the next Diana, but she gives off the same energy that made people care in the first place. It's an echo that the palace can't ignore, no matter how hard they try to move on from the past. Diana's ghost is still hanging around, and it's actually getting more annoying for the royals as time goes on. This isn't because anyone in the family is actively trying to ruin things for Camilla, but because the public never moved on. People have been holding on to these specific expectations and emotions for decades. They were just waiting for a person they actually liked to come along and fill that gap. Now that it's happening, Camilla is stuck in a shadow she'll never outrun, no matter how many ribbons she cuts. Catherine, it is said, has done just that. Not on purpose or with a plan, but simply because her personality fills the gap that Diana created. What happens next, and what it means for the crown. So, what's the actual point of all this? Camilla spent half her life fighting to be accepted by a family that hated her, only to finally get the crown and realize it's being watered down anyway. Then there's Catherine, who didn't even ask for this drama. She's just trying to get healthy, take care of her kids, and do her job without the extra headache. Meanwhile, Charles is supposedly the one pulling the strings and changing the rules, all while he's dealing with his own massive health issues. It's a mess. The monarchy has survived for hundreds of years by pretending to stay the same while quietly changing behind the scenes. But this time, the internal gears are grinding loud enough for everyone to hear. Historians love to point out that this kind of drama has happened before. The British royals are basically experts at taking away someone's power while letting them keep the fancy title. Throughout history, plenty of queens have found out the hard way that wearing a crown doesn't mean you actually run anything. The palace knows exactly how to make a role completely worthless without making it obvious. In this case, Camilla isn't being kicked out or publicly shamed. She's just being managed. It's a cold, calculated move that the monarchy has been perfecting for centuries to keep the machine running smoothly. This isn't just another boring royal staff reshuffle or some meaningless PR stunt. It's a massive neon sign pointing to where this whole mess is going. Charles is effectively betting the entire future of the monarchy on Catherine. He's giving her the real influence and making her the main character of the next chapter because he knows she's the only one people actually care about. Since there's only enough room for one person in the spotlight, Camilla is basically being shoved into the wings. He's trading in the wife for the daughter-in-law because, at the end of the day, the brand needs someone people don't actively want to scroll past. It's basically the royal version of being told you're overqualified for a job just so they can hire the younger, cheaper candidate everyone actually likes. For the monarchy, this shift is a big deal and probably should have happened a long time ago. At the end of the day, the royals only exist because people let them, and every poll shows that the public actually trusts William and Catherine way more than the rest of the family. Charles is just doing the math. He knows that if the crown is going to survive in the modern world, he has to lean into the people the public actually likes. This isn't about him being a nice guy or playing favorites. It's a cold strategy. He's willing to push his own wife into the background to save the family business, which is exactly the kind of ruthless move kings have been making for centuries. The one thing the palace suits can't just spin away is the fact that this is actually pretty brutal on a human level. Camilla isn't just a piece on a board you can move around to fix the ratings. She spent decades being the most hated woman in Britain, getting blamed for ruining a marriage that was already a dumpster fire before she even showed up. She sat through years of people trashing her and just kept going until she finally earned a bit of respect. She put in the work, but now, all that effort is being shoved aside because the higher-ups decided the brand looks better with a younger face. They're basically rewriting her job description behind her back because they need a better cover girl for the monarchy. After 30 years of being the villain, she finally gets the crown, only to be told she's being renegotiated for a better model. That's a special kind of corporate hell right there. Was this the right choice for the monarchy's future, or a profound betrayal of the woman who stood by Charles through everything the world threw at them? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.